Perfect. So it's
and then I'll manage the attendees coming in. I think I still have that capability. So, oh, I think that I don't, they're already come right in. So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you hear that noise in the background, it's my dog drinking water. Hey, we're all working from home. Got to hear those dog noises. Okay, so we'll wait just another minute or two to get started, but welcome to the WISR Coffee Break series, our technical learning series here. Today we have Mian Mael with WasteXperts, and we're going to be talking about reducing contamination at the source and increasing diversion at the source. A hot topic, I know for sure, in California and across the country, specifically at multifamily dwellings. So really excited to talk to Mian today and learn from her. So sorting at the source 101. We're trying to get to the crux of these technical and operational aspects of our industry and really kind of deliver the 101 in little bites. So excited about today. Well, I see that we have plenty of attendees rolling in here. So thank you so much. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us. And today we have here with us Mian Mael from WasteXperts. And hold on while I pull up her bio. Mian is the Director of Business Development for WasteXperts. She has worked in the solid waste and recycling industry for over 5 years, and her primary focus is providing specialized on-site solid waste and recycling management solutions throughout the West Coast, including California, Nevada, Oregon, and also Washington State. Mian, I can attest to this. She is very passionate and educated about providing education to her clients with recycling strategies to keep their business in compliance with local laws and regulation, which, as we all know, there are more and more coming through the industry all the time. And her mission is really to drive results-driven management and waste diversion solutions that improve recycling, save maintenance time, and reduce collection expense. And I love, I'm a huge fan of efficiency, and I think separating at the source is such an efficient way to reduce contamination, and sorting at the source while also educating first being that first step. So really excited to hear WasteXperts' approach, give us this 101 on sorting and reducing contamination and increasing diversion at the source. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Mian, and Mian, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Rachel. I really appreciate the introduction. And this is my first presentation with WISR. So thank you so much for having me. And let me see if I can share my screen here after I pull up my presentation. So let me start here from the beginning. All right. Everyone's seeing that okay?
Yes, we can see it, Mian.
Perfect. Okay. So, yep, this is just a little deep dive into how we perform on-site sorting in San Francisco specifically. So California as a whole obviously has their specific mandates and their goals, their diversion goals that they have. So I wanted to kind of get a little bit more specific because San Francisco is very much the, innovators. They are the first ones to kind of lead the path to implementing certain regulations and making sure that everybody is in compliance and also diverting as much as they possibly can. So as Rachel had mentioned, that we do perform a lot of this in the multifamily dwelling space. We also do this for commercial buildings as well too. So, but this is going to deep dive a little bit just more into the multifamily. So let me see if I can. All right, so and just to kind of dive into who WasteXperts is. So as Rachel mentioned, on-site solid waste and recycling management program that we provide for multifamily and also for commercial. We've been in business for over 3 decades, and just a little backstory of our founder, he actually, Dave Lentz, he started in solid waste industry working for Waste Management, and he was a garbage driver, and he actually ended up getting into management. And while he was there, he had realized that a lot of the clients that he was serving were somewhat either over-serviced, people weren't diverting their recycling, and he just saw that there was this opportunity to help people out at the source, at the property, and realized that a lot of residents, had a challenged time to be able to do it on their own. So he found this really small niche in the market where he was like, I think that this will work. So before recycling regulations had started in the state of California, he started this business as a janitorial service. And the names have changed throughout the years, and we finally landed on WasteXperts I would say about 10 years ago. And that has been really helpful for us in this company with the regulations, having people now not necessarily being forced, but required to divert their recycling. And now we're getting into the space of diverting compostable food scraps. So we have offices all over in California, Nevada, Washington. We're just going into Oregon, and within the next year or two, we should be in the Denver market and also Texas. So right now, currently, as you guys can see, this is kind of a map of everywhere our locations are. We currently service about 90,000 doors or units, and that's in the multifamily space. About over 400 properties, and we have 7 warehouses all along the West Coast. So this is kind of our linear business model. We provide trash and recycling management services, and that can be everything where we advocate for our clients, where we manage their trash for them on site, call the garbage haulers on their behalf. We right size the property, ensuring that they have the right size containers, making sure that they have sufficient amount of recycling on site and also organics, and then just making sure that they're not being over-serviced for trash. We also perform on-site recycling services, maintenance support, and also environmental. So just for the on-site recycling portion, this is where we're going to deep dive today, would be the on-site sorting, where we are trying to be in compliance with San Francisco's regulations. There is a new law that was passed in 2019 called the Refuse Separation Ordinance. So we come in and we do a granular sort where we're breaking open every single bag, and we are pulling out every straw, every lid, every piece of plastic, wrappers, everything down to the smallest amount of material, and placing them into the right receptacles. And this is just kind of a little bit of our history and our value with our company. We've seen across those 400 properties that we've been able to, with right sizing, been able to reduce trash collection costs. So we've been able to save our clients about 37% on their trash spend. And then we've also been able to improve their recycling diversion by 53%. And where we come up with a gallons per door reduction, you can kind of think about in a single family home, you have, like a 95 gallon cart, usually at the curbside. And in a very progressive city like San Francisco, the average gallons per door should be right around 40 gallons per door. So we see that a lot of places will have 100 gallons per door. We consider that to be over-serviced. So we come in and we reduce that trash gallons per door to about 43. And then another nice benefit too is that we try to help a lot of maintenance team as well. So they can focus on other things like landscaping, turning over apartments, giving them just kind of their time back and not focusing so much on the garbage side of the property. And so we've been able to save about 150 hours on average annually for these properties. So overall, our goal is to increase recycling, reduce collection costs, and reduce maintenance time. And the other part too, that's an amazing thing about our company is the impact that we've been able to make. So across our portfolio, we've been able to save 218,000 metric tons of CO2. We've been able to take about 48,000 cars off of the roads, power homes, and create green jobs. So that's something that we take a lot of pride in as well through our company for doing on-site recycling. And just tell me if I can, Rachel, can I close this part right here? I just want to make sure, is this in the way of anybody?
Your screen, you mean?
Yeah, this panel up at the top, can I minimize?
No, you know what? I can see it fine from my end. So
okay, okay, perfect. All right. So with just a couple recent studies, American recycles less than 30% of their solid waste, right? And multifamily properties recycle less than commercial businesses and single family homes, right? So it's a huge problem. And by 2050, plastics in the oceans will outweigh fish. So we've seen this to be a huge problem in the multifamily space, hence why WasteXperts exists. In 2018, less than 5% of food waste was recycled. And the food waste produces more methane and has 80 times the warming power than CO2. So 41% of the methane emissions in California are from landfills, and recycling food and yard debris creates healthy soil and compost. So that's our ultimate goal. So we've actually, let's see here. So California Air Resources Board funded NASA and Jet Propulsion Labs to survey more than 272,000 infrastructure elements in the state of California. As you can see here, they flew like a drone over California. And what they found out that the largest methane emitters in California are a subset of landfills, right? 41% of that. And so food is the largest component going into landfills and the largest emitter of methane. So they found that this was obviously a huge problem, and which we'll dive into a little bit later, had kind of launched this Senate Bill 1383 in the state of California. But, we can see here just in the multifamily space, this is all that could be recoverable or should be. And also organics is a huge part of what's going into the multifamily landfills. And that's kind of where we want to keep our focus. So all of this right here, 31% of it should be organics that's in the trash stream. And what we've come to find out, only 2% in multifamily is actually sorting that material out. So there's a lot of room for improvement, hence why the regulations and, possibly with the help of, on-site sorting and education, we can be able to improve these numbers. So as I mentioned earlier, California as a whole is doing a lot to make these changes, but San Francisco specifically had an ordinance put into place in 2019 where they had these zero waste initiatives. And in 2019, they actually amended that law where they were saying, okay, now, San Francisco is going to have to meet these zero waste initiatives. We're going to have to divert more. So in 2019, they created a law that's called Refuse Separation Ordinance. This makes San Francisco residents to have to meet certain thresholds. So they can't have more than a certain amount of percentage of contamination in each waste stream, which means the trash stream has to have a certain level of threshold of contamination, recycling, and compost. And then in 2020, coming up here real soon, January 1st, Senate Bill 1383 requirements will be in place. And then in 2030, San Francisco is wanting to reduce their garbage generation by 15% and reduce waste in landfills by 50%. So those are some pretty big goals. So a little bit about the refuse separation here. So the Department of Environment amended the existing. And what they're saying is that now that this amendment is in place, they're going to require audits to be performed. Every 3 years, they want multifamily commercial businesses to meet these requirements, and they're going to send out a team of auditors. They're going to look through your waste stream, open up your lids, and see, are you meeting these thresholds? So they've gotten really, really intense on their auditing. They have probably only hit about 20% of all the facilities that this will affect. So they're still doing audits right now. So the audits, first time, if you were to pass, that's great. They kind of leave you alone. Then another 3 years, they'll come back around, just make sure that everything's in good standings. And what I'm going to dive into is if you are to fail that audit, kind of just a little bit about the training of how to get these properties in compliance. So the inspection compliance audit, so LRG stands for large refuse generators. These large refuse generators fall into the category of any property that produces more than 40 cubic yards of uncompacted waste. And that's for all 3 streams. So this does target a lot of people, obviously, in the city of San Francisco. So you get a direct notice at your property if there is to be a fail in any one of those 3 streams. They promptly after the audit will send out a notification to the property letting you know that, hey, you've got about 30, 60 days to kind of rectify this issue, get your waste streams clean, and we'll call it good from there. Usually a lot of the times properties are not forthcoming on the first notification. So then they'll send out another notification afterwards and stating, okay, if you guys don't comply within a certain time frame, you will have to hire on a zero waste facilitator, which means you need to hire somebody on site, whether it's at the property level or a third party to come in and now sort all of your waste for you and just make sure that you meet these threshold guidelines. And they also put a little caveat in there as well that if you don't hire on a zero waste and don't clean up the waste streams, that you could be fined up to almost $1,000 per day of not having someone that you partner with. And then also the contaminations can get very, very large. I've seen it in certain cases where a multifamily building of 300 units could have maybe a waste to bill spend of about $5,000 a month. And then their contamination fees are anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000. So that month over month can get very, very expensive. So, it really pushes them to, clean up their waste. And then once that the zero waste facilitators are hired on, then you get a chance to submit a re-audit. We've hired somebody on, we finally are able to clean up our commodities, please come back out. They'll take photographs, do an assessment, and then start removing those fines. So then after about 12 months after you've got a zero waste and everything seems to be good, then they'll come back and audit. And then if that seems to be all clear, then after about 2 to 3 years, you may see another inspector that may come out and, ask to do another audit again. So that's kind of just a little bit of the timeline. So usually from first notification, got about 90 days to clean everything up and get everything dialed in and, submit for a re-audit. And a lot of the times in our experience, if a client has any issues with structural restraints, right? San Francisco buildings can be kind of small in structure and may not have the room for someone to be able to sort, or may not have enough room to have additional containers. They'll give you a little bit of a leeway and give you a little bit more time in order to get everything set up. So the city of San Francisco is willing to work with properties as long as that there's a plan in place. So this is a little bit of a self-assessment. I just wanted to show everybody what this looks like. This actually comes from the Recology's website, or the City of San Francisco Environmental. And this can just be easily printed out and you kind of just go through each waste stream. This one's for compost specifically. So you kind of open up the lid, look in there, see like, okay, what's acceptable in here and what's not. And as far as the unacceptable materials, as you guys can see, glass, e-waste, hazardous waste is an automatic fail. So that's very, very tough. You want to make sure that you get those materials out of that waste stream. And as far as the thresholds that I mentioned earlier, compost cannot have more than 5% contamination in this load. So that's a very, very small amount. And so when you're looking at maybe a 32-gallon cart or a 64-gallon cart, 5% is very, very small. So it is important to kind of just look in there and just make sure that there's like no plastic bags or, a big garbage bag that's in there. As long as those things are removed, you can rest assured that you could probably be in the clear. But I just wanted to kind of show everybody like kind of how easy it is to do a self-assessment. So then that way, if you ever, want to get ahead of it and don't want to ever, get on that list of, potential failed audits, this is a good way to kind of set yourself up for that. So I wanted to kind of show everyone a little bit of a picture of what these pass and failed audits look like. So as you can see, they're not going to dump over a whole can and say, okay, this load is 50% contaminated. They're really looking at a lot of the things, probably at the first 20–30% of the container. So, I mean, you can see right off the bat, soiled paper, food, all of that stuff is acceptable into the waste stream. And then on the right-hand side, you see that plastic packaging, wood, plastic film, plastic utensils, latex gloves is probably a huge one that I see all the time in the compost stream. And then aluminum cans and foil. When people just kind of have their food wrapped up, they just throw it into the compost stream. So that can definitely put people at risk. So what I kind of noticed that there's a lot of things that, couple items that they don't really place on a poster, letting you know, like this is acceptable and this is not. And every city is so different. That's what makes it so challenging for residents. As much as we want to participate, it's so hard without the education. And so we noticed that people will place like a pizza box into the compost stream, and that's completely acceptable. That can go into the compost stream, no problem. But then you see those little plastic tables that are inside those pizza boxes, that can't go in there. So you got to just be mindful of what things to remove before placing, materials into the compost stream. Another things that we see in there as well will be like cheese packets, right? And those cheese packets, the cheese needs to be emptied, and then the little piece of paper needs to be thrown away. And if they have any aluminum on the inside, that needs to be thrown into the trash. So just little tidbits that you may not always know. Is it compostable? Is it not? So those are just a couple examples. And also the grocery store green bags, just because they say that they're compostable, they may not always be accepted into the compost stream. So always just be mindful that, it may have a symbol on there, but if it's not BPI certified, they won't accept it. So a couple things on compost there for you guys. And same thing for the recycling. The recycling is very similar, quick little checklist, but it doesn't have everything on there that you would probably identify or that you should kind of know, like, this kind of seems like it should belong in here. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And you may go to the website and try to put in a material in there, is this recyclable? And it's just very vague. So e-waste is absolutely not acceptable into recycling streams. Actually, in the city of San Francisco, they do have an e-waste program, which is great, where you can call Recology or the city and they'll actually just do a free pickup for you. And you just put your electronics off to the side and they'll come and grab that, which makes it very nice and easy. And they do the same thing for hazardous waste as well, especially like needles. We see that a lot in larger cities where you have like diabetics, like using their needles and throwing it down the trash stream. And that can be really dangerous too for people if they are ever at the bottom sorting. So that's always something to be mindful of as well. So, biggest things that I see in the recycle stream that for sure needs to be in the trash stream would be things like latex gloves. That should belong in the trash stream, not into the recycling stream. Food obviously should belong into the compost stream, which I can show you guys here. So just a couple items, latex gloves. You'll see like these plastic mailers. That's a big one. If anyone's an Amazon shopper, you probably will get these plastic mailers, delivered to you frequently, and it may look like it's recyclable, but they actually aren't. And then styrofoam also belongs in the trash as well too. And you'll see that too in a lot of packaging when you guys get things delivered to the house, or if you go purchase something in the store, got nice cardboard on the outside and they shove it all inside with, styrofoam on the inside. So those things just need to be removed, placed into the trash stream, and then the cardboard into the recycle stream. And the same thing for trash. I mean, yes, a huge percentage of what's in the trash stream should be in the recycle and also into the compost. But there's a lot of things that we don't even realize that, where does it go? So there's a couple things that I noticed that, before working at WasteXperts, I had a lot of questions. I wasn't, versed in what's recyclable, what's not. And throughout working with the city of San Francisco, I've learned a lot. Certain things like chip bags, right? Little tiny chip bags, those actually belong in the trash stream. And, you're like, well, it kind of looks like it should belong into the recycling stream. It doesn't. And also things like at the grocery store, you buy a bag of grapes, that cellophane plastic, that crinkly plastic that you hear, you think that it goes into the recycle stream, but it actually belongs into the trash stream. So hopefully a couple of those examples will kind of help remind you guys where it belongs, and kind of help, educate where things should be placed. So as you guys can see here, there's people will put e-waste into here. A lot of people like to put furniture into the trash stream as well. I see that, putting a whole fan in there, air conditioning units, a couch, a mattress, things like that, that shouldn't go into the waste stream. It can really flag your containers for contamination. And, our biggest goal is to not have clients get charged for contamination, charged for overflow because of these materials that don't belong in those waste streams are being placed in there, and it puts, people at risk, these properties at risk. So just a little bit here, the US spends about $218 billion annually, and it's growing, processing, transporting, selling foods, food products that is never eaten. So 40% of food grown. That's a lot of waste, right? Organic waste is the largest waste stream in California. Over 6 million tons of food waste is thrown away in California each year. 1 in 8 Californians and 1 in 5 children are food insecure. So for every 2.5 tons of food rescued, 1 car is taken off the road. Landfilling organics waste leads to anaerobic breakdown of the materials, creating methane. Methane is substantially more potent than CO2. And now, as we launch into the Senate Bill 1383, which requires California to reduce that organics waste disposal by 75% in 2025, the most significant waste reduction mandate in the last 30 years. So this is a huge movement for California. So although San Francisco's been kind of already doing this and this, been exercising this, this way of life for years, the whole state of California is like, we all got to jump on board for this. So I spoke a little bit earlier on the timeline about January 1st, 2021 is when the Senate Bill 1383 regulation takes effect. So it is important for, this will affect a lot of multifamilies, making sure that you, reduce contamination in your waste stream, making sure that you're sorting things into the right places, and all multifamily and businesses will be required to have organics an organic stream at each property. So this will affect a lot of people. So just some of the requirements here, separation, and they have to, these generators are prohibited to place contaminants in these containers. They also have to document route reviews, evaluation, contamination notices, and providing tenants with a 14-day material. So if any of you guys are in the multifamily space, then if you guys have a new tenant move in, you have to educate them on the Senate Bill 1383 requirements and what the property is doing in order to comply with these new regulations. So moving forward, so ESG will continue to influence businesses, which is great, right? Like that's, I don't think that that's been the forefront of their minds before. So it is important for a lot of businesses to be conscious about, what's going on with our planet, what's going on with the state of California, why are these regulations being put in place? And although this is happening in California, I know that Washington is close second of passing a Senate Bill 1383 there as well, and requiring all multifamily businesses to have organics on site and to start sorting. So upcoming generations and customers will expect environmental and social responsibility. And my little last quote here, there's no action that society can do today to simultaneously improve our impact on the environment, manufacturing, and the economy as recycling can. And so that's just wrapping up everything for me today. I just thank everybody for listening in and learning a little bit about sorting and about San Francisco, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Mian. And Zoom just told me I couldn't put my camera on. So if you could.
Oh, I can switch you to be the host. Yep. How do I do that?
If you go into the participants list and click on my name, you should be able to make me the host.
Let's see, Rachel. Maybe
I'll be on the panelist instead of the attendee list. So if you got it. Okay.
All right.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Mian. That was so much great information and timely, especially for California. So there's
a lot to cover in California.
Yeah, there is a lot to cover, and it's so new. And what really strikes me is the pictures of the bins, and just how we're used to seeing with pictures of bins more homogeneous material. They're nice pictures. They depict, all the right materials in each bin. And that's not how it is. And especially in multifamily dwellings where you have so many sources in one concentrated area using their own, ideas of what's recyclable and not. And
it's hard to know sometimes. It's like really hard because you're like, even at the grocery store, you come home and you unpackage everything and you're like, well, this one's got a symbol, but this one doesn't, and so you just sit there and you're constantly guessing all the time. It's tough, very tough.
It's confusing. And I liked your Amazon example because it says call to recycle on a lot of these bags.
It does.
So, the word recycle, that's all you have to see. So we're up against some challenging times, but it's evolving in the right way. And that's why companies like WasteXperts exist to help get us there. So I thought this was a great introduction to sorting at the source, and also, some of the things that cities are doing to achieve their recycling goals. So thank you. And we do have a couple of questions that have come in. So coming from Jennifer, thank you, Jennifer, for the questions. Who would conduct the audits typically?
So at first, so people can do their audits prior. So if they know that they're generating more than 40 cubic yards and you haven't heard from anybody yet, you can take that self audit and be like, okay, I'm in the clear, even if someone were to come through. But the people that are going to come through is the San Francisco environment has a division that's a zero waste team. And that zero waste team will come out. They have a list of all the properties that fall under that LRG category. And they're just going to go down that list and being like, okay, building X, that's where this team member is going to go. They're literally going to drive by, open up the cans, do the self-assessment, submit it into their records, and they'll just say pass or fail. So every time there is a fail, they go into the system, and then the San Francisco environment pretty much sends out the notifications, like almost creating a ticketing system, like as drivers do, right? Like the garbage hauler drivers, when they're driving around, they can also flag if a load is contaminated, and they end up becoming higher on that list if a property is continuously receiving contamination notifications by the driver. They'll go to the top of that list, and that zero waste team will go out to the property, sometimes unannounced, sometimes they'll schedule it. But a lot of the times they just will go out there and just kind of peek in at their discretion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that in the city of San Francisco, it's the local government and the hauler working together, and I think that's the case in a lot of areas. But in some areas, maybe it is the jurisdiction, maybe it is just the drivers and the hauler. In SB 1383, they actually give the ability for the jurisdiction to appoint a designee. So that could really be, and kind of any third party to conduct these audits for compliance. Okay, and then we had another question as well. And folks, if you do have questions out there, just write them into the Q&A or into the chat. Is fine, and we can get them answered. Okay, so also from Jennifer, do the compost pass-fail items depend on the waste haulers? So how does that determine the pass-fail? Is that from the waste hauler, from the processor, from the local?
It would be from the waste hauler. So Recology is, as we mentioned, is working with the city. So they pretty much are partnered in this, where Recology is the ones who are determining, yep, we'll accept this material, no, we won't accept it. They provide that information of what's a pass or fail to the city. And then the city will say, okay, like, here's your self-assessment list. We've created it with Recology, what they had deemed to be acceptable or not acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you know, and this is my question coming on the back end of this, is, do you know how much your conversations are happening with the processor? Because ultimately, the manufacturer of the recyclable material, like the composter, has, specifications for their facility. So is that something that's usually discussed, or is that?
Yeah, I believe, sorry. I believe that they do work with the processors, and especially San Francisco. I think that they just recently passed a law as well, where when I mentioned about it has to be BPI certified, so it can't just have a little emblem that says compostable on there and a pretty leaf or like a little arrow sign saying that this is compostable. The city of San Francisco won't even allow hotels, businesses to purchase anything that's not BPI certified.
Okay. Yeah.
So which kind of helps them in a way, but obviously it still comes into the city, right? Mm-hmm. Like, as much as you want to say, like, these are the, I guess, distributors you can work with, they're still using other sources to be able to get packaging material, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. That's great. Do any multifamily dwellings, are they interested in the characterization of their material? So do you find that they want to measure the success of the programs?
Yeah, they absolutely do, especially with the larger commercial buildings. When you're talking about Salesforce, the Amazons, they want to be LEED certified as well. So waste characterizations is something that they absolutely would like to do. And a lot of the times they'll actually go through like Recology to say, hey, can you guys come out and do one full audit? Like, take our 30-yard compactor, go dump it at a transfer station and sort through all the material and tell us, like, where is, how well are we doing? What are we diverting? And then I've been a part of some of those audits as well too, where you weigh everything, right? So a 30-yard load may come just from building X, and that has X amount of floors. It may just be an administrative building. So then you can kind of educate them as well, stating, okay, well, we noticed, this building X has been producing a lot of wrappers, right? Like candy wrappers or something like that. So we'll take photographs of that stating like, okay, this amount of tonnage or, weight has been from, chip bags and wrappers that don't belong in the recycle stream. So we definitely try to provide some additional education and a report that allows them to know like, okay, how do I fix this? Because it's one thing to know about your percentages and how well you're doing, but like those little small details is what really makes a difference. Because people that are working in an office, they're bringing food from home or they're ordering out and they don't know, because it's not just your cafeteria that where they get to control what's being brought into the building and what's coming out.
Yeah, I was just thinking like, if you do provide, free candy for your employees, for example, so knowing that there are a lot of candy wrappers that are ending up in the recycling, all you have to do is put a little sign that says, please don't throw in the recycling. And that really impacts the makeup of the stream. So that's, it's just great that there's resources out there that can, make quick recommendations like that.
Yeah, those are actually really a lot easier too if you perform them like once a year, instead of having, let's say, like an on-site sorting company every day, right? Like we work with like, let's say, example, like a Hilton hotel, like that's a 7-day-a-week sorting program. Like it's a lot. It's a lot of labor. It's a lot of time, energy, a lot of education, a lot of people that are involved in that. But it may be helpful just from the get-go, have a waste characterization, understand exactly, like maybe you do it per floor. So you know who's working and who's, contributing to what's going into these waste streams will help a ton too. And that can happen just one time.
Yeah, good point. Good point. We have another question in from Michelle Nicolini. Since the city by city rules are also different, how would you recommend how the waste companies might be able to better support the messaging on how to properly sort materials with both businesses and households?
I'd probably say that they should work more closely with the city to be either funded or have another platform to be able to outreach. I think a lot of the times these haulers don't have, a sustainability department or a zero waste team that's really going to go out there and, send out the flyers or do the e-blasts or, do an education piece like this. Like I learned a lot of this stuff from going to a zero waste training, but I wish that they would actually do that for, anybody in the city, not just someone who wants to be certified in a zero waste position, but everybody who has, I guess the desire to want to sit in and learn a little bit more about it, because that's how I was able to really fully understand. It's a lot to take in, but just sitting in that one class, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I understand why. Now you guys have shown me pictures to brochures to different like posters of like what's acceptable and what's not, just for that specific city. And I have to take, I have to do the legwork to be able to go to, let's say, city of Sunnyvale or San Diego or Los Angeles to figure out what's acceptable in your waste streams. You have 3 different haulers. There should be a little bit more of a unified way. And I think if they worked a little bit more with the cities to be able to say, this is what we accept and this is what we don't accept, I think that would help a ton.
Yeah, no, good, all good points, Mia. And I often think of recycling like a supply chain, because ultimately we are trying to remanufacture, right? So education is that first step in the supply chain. And so having structures, sort of educational infrastructure in place, this being an example, I think, because also things are constantly evolving. We wouldn't have known 15 years ago what Amazon would do to our waste stream, right? And also like pouches, I always think is a really good example of like, applesauce is now coming in these. This is changing. So it's constantly evolving. So that's why you have to invest in the infrastructure, because you need something there to educate when things are just constantly changing in the back.
Yeah, I love seeing like when you see those stores where there's like no packaging on apples, like, and just, or grapes or whatever it is, because that's the hard part. It's like if something goes rotten in your fridge, like, like most people don't like realize like, oh, I have to dump it out first. And this goes in one way stream,
Right.
and the grapes go into the, into the compost stream. So it's just that learning extra step. I mean, there would be great opportunities even at the store if they could just make bigger labels, on certain things that like this goes here. That would be helpful.
It would help if the retailers and suppliers were a little more helpful.
Yeah, 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 I agree with that.
Well, I want to give an opportunity for others to jump in with any questions. We have me on here. She's a waste expert. She's an expert in this area, and available to answer any questions. So yeah, I'm going to give it a couple, another minute or so if folks have questions.
Yeah, and it could be for any state too. I mean, I'm hearing more and more about like Texas, right? Like that's kind of our next leading market because
interesting.
Austin is putting a really aggressive recycling regulation into place in 2022. Okay. So they're going to require their streams to have certain thresholds of contamination that they have to meet.
Oh, okay. Just like 1383.
Just like 1383. And then Denver is also doing that too. So it's like, all these like little progressive cities and metropolitan areas are like really jumping on the bandwagon, and it's happening fast. Mm-hmm. Like they're not slow rolling it at all. They want to be progressive, and it's just gonna, I mean, obviously San Francisco is very aggressive, right? Like you see the entire state of California is not there yet. Mm-hmm. But it just kind of shows you the direction it could potentially go.
No, absolutely. And yeah, another question comes up. So like what would you say, Mian, is the impact of sorting at the source versus, relying on once the material all gets to the processor? Like if you had to explain that value proposition.
Well, a lot of the times I know when it goes to a MRF, to a transfer station, certain contaminants will slow down that process, right? Like plastic bags getting caught into the machines, electronics breaking a machine. So there's a lot of things that, as technology grows and robotics are great. And I actually just recently had a conversation with someone in that field, and he was like, robots can absolutely do sorting, right? And the equipment can absolutely do it, but they cannot capture all the little things that humans can, what a human eye can. And especially in multifamily, you do have so much diversity, language barriers sometimes makes it very, very hard, where education has its challenges. So, having an on-site sorter will just have one additional party that's just kind of helping in that process, be a middleman. So where I think like there's equipment that can do it, I don't know if it'll get to that point where AI is going to detect 100%.
And I think actually what would help AI and robotics, and it's really interesting because our last coffee break was on robotics, but would help it is if it had a cleaner stream, then it could see the pictures more clearly and not be so focused on the noise around. Like a cleaner stream will be able to help robotics be more efficient in recovering what actually is recyclable. So I definitely see that they can support one another, and how sorting at the source is just it's really important. I think especially on the compostable side, because we're not seeing many technologies that can separate out that wet type of stream.
Yeah, that's a hard part too, especially with compost. I don't think that there's actually I'm sure we'll get there, but there just isn't as much equipment that has been built out to be able to support the amount of volume that it produces as well. Because I mean, compost is such a huge chunk of what is going into the trash stream. It's going to be so hard to just source that all out. And clean material too, as you know, it has to be clean in order for it to be useful and, you know, renewed or, you know, recycled.
That's right. That's right. Well, you know, no other questions have come in. I think, you know, this was a wonderful session. We could give everybody a little bit of their time back and end a little bit early, but I do have a few closing notes. So this is our last WISR coffee break tech series for 2021, but we will be bringing it back in 2022. It seems like it's well liked by our community and helpful, and just so and we welcome different ideas of things to do 101s on, and just really keeping in the operational and technical side of the business. Of course, everybody should know that we also do our leadership series, which is more emotional intelligence, leadership training and development. This is meant to give you tools in the toolkit to know the lingo, the impacts of different parts of operations, how to talk about different parts of operations and the technical aspects of this industry. And it's always evolving too. When the waste stream evolves, we have to evolve along with it in this industry. So that's what we're trying to do. Just keep our education going and our offerings. So if you guys have any ideas, or if you yourself want to give a 101, we will totally welcome that. So if you have something to share, if you're an expert in something, come give us a little bit of a talk on it, and we'll set up a coffee break series for you. So thank you, Mian, so much. This was really helpful and, again, timely, and really appreciate you and getting to know you as well. So
thank you so much for having me, and everybody for listening. I really appreciate it.
We look forward to seeing
you.
you.
I love talking trash, so that's,
yeah. We all do. That's why we're all here. That's why we're all here. All right. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you next year. We don't have any WISR things, so this is it for the year. And makes me a little sad, but it makes me really happy for going into 2022, because we have some exciting things we're planning. So thank you, everyone. Happy New Year, happy holidays, and we hope to hear from you and see you in 2022.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.